Hey guys, I know this is coming out kind of late, but I didn't want to do a composite review of all last week's CW shows. Supergirl, The Flash, and Arrow. Flash, I'm going to be pretty vocal about because of the reveal of Savitar. But I just want to start off on a positive note and just start off with Supergirl, since it was probably the most solid episode of last week. So in Supergirl, Season 2, Episode 19, is a lot of it is about how Alex's kidnapping from a guy named Rick Malvern, who you probably won't remember, but if you don't, they remind you in the episode. He was a kid that went to junior high with Kara and Alex. He's featured in the flashback for season 1, episode 17. But he asked Alex out on a date to the beach, and both him and Alex witnessed Kara saving a mother and her child from a car that was about to explode. And you find out more about and they flesh out this character more when you find out that he actually grew up with an abusive mother, who was physically and verbally abusive of him to the point where he's rescued by his father, who, even though he was a criminal who was responsible for 2 counts of murder, he decides that he wants to break him out of prison because Kara put him away at some point, and he feels like he's in debt. Rick feels like he's indebted to his father and owes him, regardless of his crimes, because he saved him from an abusive upbringing, to the point where when he moved to National City, he knows that when he knew about Kara moving to National City and Supergirl moving to National City, they started to piece everything together, and it's been actually following them both Danvers sisters around for over a year and planning it out with almost Batman-esque levels of planning, to the point where he knew when to grab Alex from when she and Kara were having dinner. They ordered in pizza, and Kara and Maggie were butting heads over hostage negotiation, in which Maggie tried to talk the criminals down, and Supergirl just busts in and just subdued took the criminals captive. And they're talking about, and I liked how they noted something in the context of the show, something called the Supergirl defense, in which criminals used to get either lesser sentences or amnesty because of the use of excessive force and vigilantism, which is the reality situation like that wouldn't be unheard of in such a situation. And Kara insists that she's there for help, hope, and compassion, and that she'd rather end the fight sooner rather than later, and she's pretty headstrong about their opinions. She's kind of a more shoot first, more Kara just comes across as more shoot first, ask questions later kind of thing. And Maggie used to be more of a mediator, which is kind of weird because it's it made me think back to the Dominators crossover where Supergirl was trying to actually negotiate with the aliens about releasing the president. So it just kind of makes you feel like that's a lesson you could have learned by now, but I guess because it was pertaining to Alex getting kidnapped, that Kara became more panicky and irrational. Well, they both kind of acted that way in a sense, but but like I said, the whole kidnapping was a catalyst for, I felt like it brought out some of most of Benoist and Floriana Lima's best performances, especially from the latter when she's trying to communicate with her Alex on a laptop, who's trapped in this tank, and saying how they want to have their first vacation, first dog, and all these other firsts. And eventually, by the end of it, they declare love for one another, and Supergirl is just becoming headstrong and impatient because, he has all these, like I said, Rick has all these elaborate backup plans. He wants to, he says, you have to break my father out of the prison or Alex dies. And Kara just becomes impatient and tries to fly over to a known location to where Alex might be, because she actually has a tracker embedded in her shoulder, which she uses to cut open with a broken credit card, and just wires it to the surveillance camera that's in her tank to try to signal the DEO. And Kara flies there immediately because even though Maggie says like, "Oh, Rick seems unfazed by it. There has to be more to it than that." And when Kara flies to the location, it turns out that the signal was relayed to a false location, so it ends up, instead of having, like 36 hours to be able to save Alex, now the countdown goes down to 4, and her tank starts to fill up with water, and Alex has to like take off some of her pants and her clothes to try to like, use her pants to like, sustain oxygen, whatever, and try to survive. And Supergirl's beating herself up over it for being like so rash about the whole thing, and John has to remind her that she's not the only one who's worried about her well-being. And, Maggie, who's so worried about Alex as well, it gets to the point where now he even has to talk to talk to Rick, who originally they tried to, they had like Johns tries to disguise himself as the father and try to like reason with his son and talk him down, but apparently even Rick knows his dad's mannerisms well enough to know that know about John being a Martian and a shapeshifter and be able to block his telepathy. The latter they never really explain. So Maggie becomes desperate and decides to steal some DEO technology to break out Peter Thompson, Rick's dad. Kara realizes what she's doing, and then it's kind of takes the role reversal where she's the one who tries to be, negotiate with Peter and says, "Look, you've done a lot of crappy things in your life, but the one thing you've done right is be a good father to Rick, so you need to be a father to him now." And because he seems like kind of shocked and a little bit horrified that what lengths he's going to try to get him out, he gives up where Alex could be, and both Supergirl and Maggie are able to find her in time before she drowns. And I kind of like this. It was like a really solid episode because they never really focused on the Kara and Maggie dynamic. It was just always like Kara and Mon-El, and then like Alex and Maggie. They had like their own storylines with their significant others. So, like I said, like Alex being kidnapped, and she was. It kind of zigzagged the trope of being the damsel in distress. Alex was trying to deliberately fight for her life and fight for her way out, even with everybody's attempt to rescue her. So that's something I really appreciate, and I think it's one of like the strongest episodes of the season. And again, Melissa Benoist and Floriana Lima's performances were probably the biggest standouts here. And another B plot was that Rhea, Mon-El's mom, was trying to manipulate Lena Luthor into building an interdimensional transporter that was used in Slaver's Moon back in episode 9. And it's the thing that makes Lena suspicious where she is when Rhea uses the term at dinner, "thank the gods." And between that, the fact that the portal is made out of like a metal that's not found on Earth, and by using the scanner that L Corp developed to identify aliens, makes you realize that Rhea has been deceiving her, and she tries to send her away. But it seems like Rhea is still able to manipulate her into helping her build the interdimensional portal under the guise of helping, Rhea get back to her own planet and being able to use the interdimensional transporter for humanitarian efforts on Earth. And she originally tried to consult Kara about it, but because she was so distracted with the whole Alex crisis that Lena decides to work with her. Rhea, which just feels like, okay, you're smarter than this. You know that she's as manipulative as your mother, but like she still goes along with it anyway. So it's a case of plot-induced stupidity, but other than that, that's my only gripes with it. I just feel like it's a pretty, solid episode regardless. So with Arrow, season 5, episode 20, Underneath, follows up from the cliffhanger from episode 19, in which Prometheus used a EMP to trap Oliver and Felicity in the Arrow Cave with no means of escape. And Oliver starts to worry that may have been a means for for them both to just die slowly, of like suffocation in the Arrow Cave, with while Prometheus goes after Oliver's son William. They basically are flashbacks to the the time between seasons 4 and 5 in which they haven't Oliver and Felicity haven't made a new Team Arrow, and there's little explanation for why he got rid of the sleep. He went from being like sleeveless in season 4 to putting the sleeves back on his costume. It was because like a bullet was pierced through his a bullet wound, like, pierced through his arm. Even though I just feel like they wouldn't really change much. But anyway, it turns out Curtis is noticing it's apparent that Curtis like wanted them in the flashback to try to get Oliver and Felicity back together. So he bought them like Chinese food and some drinks, and they were just goofing around the salmon ladder and ended up having this like drunken sex. But in the flashbacks, Felicity refused to reconcile, get back together, just because of the fact that Oliver did not trust him, was not didn't trust her enough with his secret about William, and this feels like, okay, if you can't trust him about, if you can't trust her about that, then it's like, what can she expect him to open up about in general, whole relationships about trust. Present day, Oliver's just trying everything to get out of there. He's trying to use like explosive arrows to get through, but Felicity warns him, and whose chip implant allows her to walk, like temporarily paralyzes her. From the EMP says that Cisco designed the place to make sure to be able to withstand nuclear blasts. So the explosive arrows aren't working. They try to look at Cisco's plans to get out. They try to use Oliver's motorcycle to power electricity to, I guess, the elevator bunker. And during the whole mishap, the methane pipes start to burst, and now they feel like that realize they only have so much time before they run out of air. Renee and Curtis go to check on them, and they realize something's wrong, and even they're trying to break into the bunker, but because of the whole methane pipe burst, that they try to like, I guess, use like a blowtorch to like meld their way through the elevator, and that causes an explosion. And then they're worried because they only have so much time left to get Oliver and Felicity out of there. Oliver's able to use an explosive arrow to get to the steam pipe, but because of his earlier attempts to climb through the elevator shaft, and he fell and he got impaled, I guess, with a screw or some sharp object, and the methane and carrying Felicity, that he starts passing out. And that's where he discloses that under Chase's torture, he was forced to admit to himself that he's a killer, and that's why he never supported Felicity's actions with Helix, because she was afraid that she would turn out like him. Or Felicity gives Oliver a pep talk, saying that you've been through 5 years in hell, you've been through 5 years of vigilanteism versus some of the worst criminals. That I think that Chase, she's convinced that Chase got into his head, and that he was forced to confess what Chase wanted to hear, and that he didn't become a monster like Prometheus after everything he's been through. And that basically doesn't be so down on himself. And they also have this like B plot where like Lila and Diggle are arguing like who's more and more like compromised. And the fact is that Diggle should be trusting Lila as much as he trusts Oliver, because like they both, both Oliver and Lila have both done like morally questionable things, but it's like there seems to be like a double standard with her. And maybe if they like explain that Diggle has the same concerns for Lila that Oliver has for Felicity, that that they're both if they did like a better job at illustrating the parallels, that they're both afraid that the women in their lives will closest to them will be able to be like their rock and keep them grounded and just going from off the rails, that maybe I would have been able to see like both sides, but it just comes across, just Diggle just being a hypocrite and just kind of up as a jerk. And even when Lila gives him a list of all like the Black Ops operations she signed off on, like even that kind of shuts him up. And there's kind of this funny moment where, and this funny moment where like Dinah like joking about how Renee and Curtis bicker so much, like oh they make an adorable couple, and you also find out that Lila stole or reverse engineered one of Curtis's T spears in order to help, which even though that bothers Diggle, it ends up being used to help get through to the steam pipe where Oliver and Felicity are trying to get out, and even provides like a burst of adrenaline to help Oliver get to like a ledge in the steam pipe in which Diggle's able to grab them out, be able to grab them when he makes the jump with Felicity on her back, and Renee's able to belay and like pull them all out before they they become victim to any kind of explosions or suffocation. And Oliver gets out of emergency surgery, and they're apparently going to use Argus as a temporary base of operations. As they can continue their search for Chase, and they get the Arrow Cave operating again. And of course, Felicity's spinal implant is replaced, so she's up and walking again. And the episode ends with basically William getting off a school bus. He's changed his name to Matthew, and he's being confronted by Adrian Chase. So, I mean, this episode was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, I feel like it did address the problems that people had with Felicity, especially in season 4, and basically put the whole ship to bed. But it just also felt like it just felt like filler and didn't really move the plot forward in terms of the whole like, Prometheus stuff. I mean, he was like the driving force, but it just seemed like it was trying to like address like problems or criticisms from season 4. So the episode, it was okay. I mean, it's not one of the best episodes, strongest episodes of the season, but it was supposed to be, they already advertised as like a bottle episode, and maybe they're just trying to like, the show's trying to like save their money up for like the last 3 and trying to like end the season with a bang, especially since the season finale is supposed to be like a huge team up with Oliver recruiting like Malcolm Merlin, Deathstroke, Nissa Al Ghul, and Captain Boomerang against Prometheus' forces on Lian Yu, which his ranks include Talia Al Ghul, Black Siren, and Artemis. And it's I guess there's a way of just trying to have like this huge finale, like pseudo season finale, have like the this chapter of the show come full circle. Now with the Flash, this episode is also a mixed bag. I mean, this is season 3, episode 20. I Know Who You Are. Savitar's identity is finally revealed. Up until the reveal, I found genuinely nothing wrong with this episode. Like, I liked how they introduced a new character called Tracy Brandt, who is supposed to be the scientist who helps develop the technology that helps Barry trap Savitar in the future. He's played by Annie, he's like Anne Dudek, and she was on, if anybody remembers, she was on House playing Wilson's girlfriend in season 4, and the thing is, like, they flesh out her character enough that she doesn't come across as like a carbon copy of Caitlin Snow, because it's made clear, and it's been confirmed by Daniel Panabaker, she's going to stay Killer Frost through season 4, and it's made pretty clear, and it's obvious that she's going to be brought in Tracy as a replacement as the female scientist on Team Flash, and she's basically a grad student who failed a dissertation about like extra dimensional energies and studying speedsters and about the Speed Force, and she was considered a crackpot in present day, when even though she's a Nobel Prize winning scientist in the future. And basically, she's kind of like down in the dumps, and ready to just like throw in the towel about her dreams and aspirations, when Barry, HR, and Cisco try to like comfort, help, and then of course they're confronted by Killer Frost, and because Cisco's reluctant to hurt Caitlyn and kill her in the heat of battle. They reluctant to use his power. His powers, in that it's Barry that has to bail him out by taking like blowtorch and like snapping his fingers and causing Killer Frost to flee. And even like a second battle when Killer Frost is, it's apparent that she's working with Savitar, and Savitar has sent her to kill Tracy Brandt in order to snuff out the Caitlyn Snow side of her, and also to prevent Tracy from helping Team Flash trap him in the Speed Force. At least are probably one of the coolest things. Like Killer Frost basically does the ice slide that Iceman did in the X-Men Days of Future Past, and around the city, like chasing HR and Tracy and Cisco, with Barry chasing after her. And it's like one of the coolest sequences I've seen on this show. Like, I was just geeking out, and it's cool to see like how much like Killer Frost has honed her powers to that extent. And Cisco's still hesitating to hurt Killer Frost slash Caitlyn, and even has to confide with, even butt heads with Julian about it, who just wants to just kick her ass and just bring her back to the lab and just try to find a way to cure her. Cisco's still mad at him for taking off the necklace that kept Caitlyn in control of Killer Frost. But instead of either one of them just being petty to one another, kind of like how Cisco was with Barry and like the first 9 episodes of Flash season 3, they're able to kind of like work, not let their differences get in the way of trying to like help Caitlyn bring her back to her old self. And they kind of have this, and it seems like the writers are kind of trying to get this idea of shipping HR and Tracy, or at least like having HR do what he does best, which is try to inspire people and be like her muse and tell her that, I know it's overwhelming that you get to do these amazing things in the future, but he keeps saying that he has faith in her, and she even points out how Savitar's armor is used to prevent his speed from consuming him, and she can maybe use the device, come up with the device to use that against him. And there's also this like side plot where Cecile like casually says that he loves Joe, and she's afraid to say it back because she's afraid of putting her in danger and being able to disclose about the extent of what goes on in his life with Barry and Wally. But he finally does, and tells her, reciprocates, and tells her about Barry and Wally being Flashes, but that's only after Killer Frost kidnaps her and threatens to kill her unless they turn over Tracy Brandt to her and Savitar. And even when Barry's trying to talk her down, she's repeating his words like before like he even like speaks them. Like it's almost like he knows exactly what he's gonna say, and she even says like, "Oh, I knew." Savitar told me exactly what you would say. Like, you guys are more alike than you think. And she knew that Cisco was going to be in the rafters. That's why she placed bombs. But Cisco's able to get over his reservations about fighting Killer Frost to put a point where he's able to knock out Caitlyn and get a sample of her blood. But then Savitar comes in and gets Killer Frost out of there. And when talking with Joe and Wally and Barry, and Joe says, what would be without love? Barry starts piecing everything together and goes to confront Savitar and gives his whole speech and realizes that Savitar really is a future version, psychotic version of Barry himself. And Savitar confirms it when he comes out of the armor, and you see Barry you see like an older Barry who's wearing all black clothes, and his face, and like half his face is scarred, his eyes discolored, and basically, like I said, I found nothing wrong with this episode. The Joe and Cecile subplot, the stuff with Tracy Brandt and Killer Frost and Cisco. If this had not been for this ending, I would have given this a 5 out of 5. But at this point, I have to give it like a 3 out of 5. Because this, I mean, I didn't want to believe this. I know a lot of people made, was able to made this determination before that, and when he kept, because Savitar kept saying I'm the future Flash. He wasn't saying I'm the future comma Flash. He wasn't. It wasn't hyperbole. He was literally telling Barry who he really was. And I was pretty outspoken about how absurd I thought that theory was, because like, why would any version of Barry want to intentionally kill Iris and chastise people for this? And for that, I just want to just formally, I owe those people an apology just for just ruling it out just based on that little plot hole. But it still just feels like, at first I was this is like, so this is like, felt like this could be, was not only like the nail in the coffin for me and made me feel like this season of the show was just as bad as season 3 of Arrow, but it also made me feel like this could be the nail in the coffin for the show at this point, and it could be the show jumping the shark. And I try to rationalize and talk with people online that maybe this was a rogue time remnant of Barry and not a future version of the original Barry, because episode 319, Emo Barry from 2024 mentioned he created time remnants of himself in an attempt to stop Savitar, and Savitar killed most of them, which is something I made a note of. Even though it said that it was before Iris died, it could have been like, I thought, okay, maybe one of the time remnants were left for dead, or maybe Barry tried to create more time remnants trying to stop Savitar and avenge Iris, or just lock him in the Speed Force forever. And one of them went rogue and felt like a discarded copy, and tried to use the Philosopher's Stone as a means of gaining more power, but ended up corrupting him like the One Ring. But then they have like a sizzle reel that was released today on the CW's YouTube page, which suggested that it's not a time remnant, it's just like a future version of the Barry we know from the main timeline, not like an alternate universe or an alternate timeline Barry, or a time remnant is just like a future version of our Barry. Like and I don't like, and you know what, I'm trying to be optimistic and reserve judgment, because the trailers could be misleading, but at the same time it's like, why would they do something like that if it's gonna like turn off viewers? Because it's like, I feel like there are more people who were upset about this reveal and not happy with this reveal than people who were happy with it, because of the fact that they've already made Barry an obnoxious character as it is, just being on the side of the angels. So now it's just sending the message that when push comes to shove, that apparently he's just as petty, fatalistic, and apparently as narcissistic as Eobard Thawne. And I don't like that idea at all. And it just feels like a middle finger. It feels like a middle finger from the writers to the fans, that it just feels like they become so lazy and complacent and just don't care about the storyline, that. And there's some people like it because it's like, oh, it's just an adaptation of the Flash storyline, like Terminal Velocity, where Wally was trying to save Linda from dying in the future and out of time, where a future version of Barry went psycho. But it's like, if there was a more faithful adaptation of the latter, where it's like a future version of Barry was playing like, it basically just, the tragedy, Iris' tragedy just made him like a speedster version of Vigilante from Arrow, then I would go along with it. But the fact that it's like, neither one of those comic book storylines had future versions of Wally or Barry becoming so evil and corrupt to the point where it's like they would intentionally try to murder the women of their lives because they thought, just because they wanted to become villains, and or like character building or something. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I feel like they should have revealed this like weeks ago, and maybe have fleshed this out at least so we can like understand it, because they have to explain a lot in like there's only like 3 episodes left in the season. They have to have like a lot to like cover, a lot to cover and a lot to explain as far as like his motivations are concerned. And it's Jesus. It just feels like, maybe I could have gotten behind this idea of Barry literally being his own worst enemy if it was like, say, for like down the road, like maybe for its final season. because let's admit it, like we're never gonna get, aside from like Killer Frost, we're never gonna get any villain they have after this, speedster or not. We're never gonna, the audience is never gonna get as emotionally as invested in the big bad as they are with Savitar, as Savitar at this point. Like I think they did pretty much, the writers pretty much like blew their load, and it just feels like kind of like, it just like it would have been more creative and less predictable, as opposed to just being like lazy and uninspired. They just like, oh, let's make it a future version of Barry because because they just wanted to go with the idea of Barry being his worst enemy, literally and figuratively. But to have it do it in the same season, it just feels like it just craps on the character, and it just feels, like I said, it just feels like repetitive. Like, you know, we had like three evil speedsters in a row, and I. I really just, I'm just kind of at a loss for words, a loss for words. Like I just don't know how to feel about this other than this is just a horrible idea, and I mean that's all I can say. I mean, if you guys like can get behind it, I mean more power to you. But I just think it's just kind of, it's just a kind of a bad move on the writer's part, and you know I don't know how this show can come back from this. I mean, how do you guys feel about it? I mean, did you predict that it was going to be Barry Allen was going to be the guy under, was going to be Savitar? Do you think it was? Do you really think it was going to be Wally? I mean, how do you honestly feel about the idea? How do you feel about the other shows? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.